Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, Somali Al Shabaab militants say that they're behind the gunning down of a Maltese manager of a northern port and a car bomb that killed at least 9 people at a mall in Mogadishu. Also, Ethiopia's Prime Minister forges ahead with efforts to get members of his ruling coalition on side in opening up the political sphere to more contributions from opposition figures. We take a closer look. And as the number of homeless children in Togo continues to rise, one organisation tries to give street kids a place to go to improve their life chances. Our correspondents report. But first, Somali Al Shabaab extremists have claimed responsibility for a car bombing in which 9 people were killed in Mogadishu and the fatal shooting of the boss of a major northern port. Paul Anthony Formosa was shot at the Bosasu port whilst he was at work on Monday. Soon after, a device detonated in the Hamarwain market in the capital. Some of the victims died in a building that collapsed a little after the blast.
I parked my vehicle here and went into my office, and then shortly after leaving the scene, I heard a loud explosion which demolished the whole area, including my own car.
I saw 7 bodies and knew them all. I'm the owner of this shop, and as you can see, my shop was badly affected by the car bombing.
Supporters of Cameroonian opposition leader Maurice Kamto are calling for him to be released. He was arrested a week ago, but still hasn't officially been charged. His supporters say that he's under investigation for insurrection and inciting violence. He and several of his party are still being detained, but haven't yet seen a judge. They started a hunger strike last Friday in protest. Indira Etting tells us more.
Detained at a special police operations unit in Yaoundé for a week now, Maurice Kamto is still to appear before a judge to be charged formally. Kamto and his associates started a hunger strike last week protesting their arrest and detention, which to them is illegal. Now, a dozen or a little over 2 dozens of some CRM party militants out of the 217 arrested last week in Douala appeared before a judge at the Yaoundé Court of First Instance over the weekend. All of them have denied any wrongdoing. The case was adjourned to the 15th of March this year. Maurice Kamto, a former government minister and law professor, was arrested last Monday in connection with protest marches carried out by his opposition Cameroon Renaissance Movement political party. Kamto has continued to insist he won the October 2018 presidential elections and not long-term leader Paul Biya.
Indira Ayek there for us. Now, French warplanes bombed an armed convoy crossing into Chad from Libya on Sunday. The 2 airstrikes were the first by French jets in support of Chadian troops. Chad is an ally in France's fight against Islamist militants in West Africa. The Chadian rebel group, the UFR, has said that the raid targeted its men and warned France that the intervention marked a dangerous turn in Paris's involvement in Chad's internal affairs. The UFR has been trying to topple President Idriss Déby since 2009.
The vehicles were intercepted, repelled and neutralised by our armed forces in cooperation with French Operation Barkhane. The army chief states that the situation is under control and our borders are totally secured.
We hear authorities talk about terrorism and jihadists, but we know that Chadians are killing each other, whether we are talking about government forces or rebel groups. They are all Chadians. Therefore, it is most surprising that France, a country that values freedom, cannot assess this situation properly.
Ethiopia's Prime Minister has been trying to get members of parliament on board with his efforts to include opposition parties in the political arena. Abiy Ahmed came to power last year and continues to push through sweeping reforms on a number of fronts, but many members of his EPRDF ruling coalition still mistrust political critics. Nicolas Chemin tells us more.
In Ethiopia's parliament, there are no opposition lawmakers. But Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, who came to power last year, has welcomed back exiled opposition parties and separatist groups in the country. Some of their members are expected to win seats in the next election in 2020.
There are many political parties, about 20 of them, who could not undertake any political activity in the past 15, 20, 30 years, some even as far back as 40 years. Now they have come back from their bases across the globe. It is a major victory for this parliament.
On the streets of the capital Addis Ababa, there were mixed reactions to Abiy Ahmed's policy of bringing back opposition leaders to Ethiopia.
I'm worried that some of these parties might now challenge the unity that the Prime Minister is bringing to the country. I'm seeing activities that can harm the progress he has made.
The fact that opposition parties are back home and are free, it's a great progress. It gives us an option to choose whoever we want.
Since he became Prime Minister, Abiy Ahmed has stunned many with his sweeping reforms. He has released thousands of political prisoners, condemned abuses by security forces, and made peace with longtime rival Eritrea. Despite this, violence between different ethnic groups has not totally disappeared. But his democratic reforms stand in stark contrast with the different governments that preceded him.
The number of homeless children in Togo is on the rise. It's reckoned that around 6,000 kids live on the street. In a bid to support homeless kids and give them some of the protection and stability needed for a certain future, one youth organisation has been taking in young people who have nowhere else to go. Our correspondents report.
These children may be early risers, but they're not going to school. They'll spend the day rummaging around waste dumps, looking for scrap metal to sell on to Asian vendors. Simon has been homeless for 5 years.
During the day, I can earn up to 500 francs, and that gets me through the day.
Parfait is 11 years old. He's been on the street for 2 years. Like Simon, he ran away from home and away from his abusive parents.
In the evening, after I've eaten, I walk around, and once it gets really late, I look for a place to sleep.
To help steer the boys away from petty crime, an association of young social workers do the rounds to take care of them during the day. From experience, the NGO staff knows big groups of kids left to their own devices often end up forming antisocial gangs.
If we compare this to the situation in Ivory Coast, the children have become a threat to society. They rob people or can even kill people.
The organisation looks after around 300 children who go to school and get medical checkups 4 days a week. Having somewhere to be reduces the health risks that come with sleeping rough. Edri comes across at least 20 cases of malaria every week. Today, Denis has a painful wound under his arm. Mentally and physically worn out, the consultation shakes up the young boy.
My mother died, and my father's new wife abused me, so I left. I don't want to go back home. I want to live with another family. I've been on the streets for a year.
According to UNICEF's latest report, there are about 6,000 homeless children like Denis in Togo. For tonight, he's opted for safety in numbers and found a refuge near his friends. The 2 government-funded centres that take in homeless children only do so for 3 months. After that, if reconciliation with their parents fails, the only place for them to go is back on the street.
The young South African artist Thembile Sizane has just opened her first solo show in London at the Tyburn Gallery. Called Speaking Through Walls, the 27-year-old says that she finds inspiration from her heritage, history and contemporary hot-button topics like South African land reform. Take a look.
This video, called Falling, is part of South African artist Thembile Sizane's solo show in London at the Tyburn Gallery. One of the issues she explores in her videos and photographs is land reform. The South African government is considering, in certain circumstances, expropriating land which is mostly held by white farmers.
This body of work kind of surfaces in a time where South Africa is having conversations around land reform in changing the constitution to allow for land reform. And so, in part, this body of work speaks about this ushering in of the ancestral or spiritual realm, speaking to issues of land, because the land is where the bones of our ancestors, our rituals and our traditions are.
Some of the photographs are printed onto antique mirrors. The main themes of this exhibition are her dreams and ancestral worship.
There's a very good interplay with her spirituality and the forefathers and where she comes from and the roots, her roots, and also the politically charged circumstances under which she takes the photographs, where she places herself and how she places herself.
To be able to come here and kind of relate, with the artist's own kind of world, her own dreams, her own kind of ancestry, and kind of see something that is also quite meaningful for me. It's quite healing.
Cezanne's work is selling well across Africa. She hopes that thanks to this London exhibition, she can now conquer the European continent.
That looks amazing. Well, that, though, is where we have to leave it now for Eye on Africa for now. Thanks for joining us. Do so again if you can. Take care.